Welcome to The Business Mind. Join me, Mark Fechner, as I sit down with business leaders to discuss their real-world challenges and formulate forward-thinking, creative solutions. We focus on real people with real issues, and we tackle those issues in real time. I don't have the answers. I help you find the answers within you. Sometimes all that is needed is just a slight change in perception. The Business Mind Show starts now. Good morning, everyone. I am Mark Fechner, and welcome to The Business Mind here on Transformation Talk Radio, the show that highlights our guests' pursuit of excellence through the process of one-on-one coaching. I would welcome your questions or comments on the Transformation Talk Radio website, or if you would prefer, on our Facebook live feed /Transformation Talk Radio. So we are well into 2023, and it's kind of hard to believe that the virus, COVID-19 virus, has been with us for almost 3 years. And even though it appears that things are sort of opening up, there are fewer restrictions on businesses, people are, dropping their masks and congregating more, there's still, the virus is still here, and it still affects us personally and medically and things of that nature. I can personally attest to that, having now gone through my own bout of COVID over the last couple of weeks. But outside of the medical implications, there have also been societal and professional and organizational implications as well that we all have to start dealing with, or if we haven't started dealing with, we need to start dealing with. And those are far-reaching and challenges, and they're here to stay, to be quite honest. And so that's really what we're going to talk about with my guest today. She is an enrolled agent, and in case you don't know what that is, an enrolled agent is federally trained, federally licensed. They are tax experts. I often refer to her as a CPA without borders. Because she can pretty much work with anyone on anything tax related. She has her own tax accounting firm, IFS Tax and Accounting, LLC. Please welcome Ms. Sawsan Abubaker.
Thank you, Mark. I am happy to be here, and hopefully we will have a beneficial session for all our listeners.
Well, I hope so too. More importantly, I hope it's beneficial for you. So I know I gave the introduction, but why don't you go ahead, explain a little bit about your business?
I'm like Mark had introduced, I do taxes, and I am a federally licensed enrolled agent, which really is, yes, a CPA without borders. When it comes to the IRS, we basically are just like CPAs. We have unlimited representation rights, and we also have to take specific hours to renew our licenses, and the IRS holds us to a higher standard because we need to know tax law.
Okay.
I started this business in 2010, and as all small business owners know, it's always a challenge, it's always a struggle, but very rewarding as well.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And particularly because we're small business owners, it all falls on us.
Yes.
And I also want to point out that during the pandemic, I know in our conversations, there in the past, there's always been a tax season. It starts about now. It ends around April, and then you all get a break. And for the past couple of years, you've not had that.
No. It seems, I think with all the law changes and taxpayers being busy with other things, were overwhelmed, especially those small business owners wanting to stay afloat, wanting to survive COVID. We've been ongoing tax season. We have a lot of, myself and my colleagues were talking about this, and like, we have to force ourselves to take a break, or otherwise we just keep going.
Yeah.
Like even till this day, I met with a new client yesterday. Last tax return she filed was in 2020. she hasn't done 2021, and now we're in the 2022 tax filing season.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all because, well, I never understood PPP, or I never understood this, or I just focused on growing my business. And because she started her business right before we shut down.
Mm-hmm.
So so that keeps us ongoing. We've been ongoing ever since COVID.
Yeah, that never ever having, I mean, it's already tough for business owners to step away from their business if they don't
Yeah,
have some things in place
correct.
to help, take things over. But for someone like you,
Mhm.
who is the sole practitioner of what you do, and what is very detailed and specific, it probably is even harder to say, yeah, I'm gonna, it's April, it's April 10th. I'm gonna take a break.
Right. You can't do that, especially with the changing in laws.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I've said this to you before, tax law is not a cookie cutter where you
Yeah.
can just implement it straight across every client. Everybody's different, income levels are different. So, the IRS also was delayed in giving us, tips or rulings on how we should implement these. So that delayed a lot of things that just rippled, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And as we know, the IRS is still delayed in processing some, items
Right.
and tax returns. So that also delays a lot of things. And it's very important for us, especially for me as an enrolled agent, to stay up to date with tax law to help my
Right.
clients and audit
Right.
proof the clients. So that keeps us going all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what is it that you would like to talk about today?
Well, the main issue with, especially for solopreneurs, is that life work balance. It's the time management, because solopreneurs know we're everything in the business. We're the marketer, we're the admin, we're the one provided the service, we're the customer service. So it's very hard sometimes to balance. And then when the family needs you, you need to be there too,
Mm-hmm.
because you don't want to be the workaholic and just neglect family. So it's hard sometimes to do that life work balance.
Right. Right.
And
Exactly.
you try to find avenues. Yes, the tax professionals use software to do the taxes and things like that, but you can't rely on the software, because the software can be wrong,
Right. Okay.
and those kind of things. Yes.
It is what sort of aspect to that life work balance? Because that means something different to everybody.
Okay.
But for you, what aspect of that life work balance are you kind of focused on?
Well, for me, it's being there for family, being
Okay.
there for my children who are working. They have children. I babysit their children while they're at work. So I want to be able to work and babysit the children and also service my clients. And at times that becomes a little difficult, only because you're only human and you're going to get run down. And even if you have a plan in mind that, as soon as those kids are picked up by the parents, I can go straight to the computer and work. It doesn't work that way sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. As a matter of fact, you have a couple of little ones with you today. They're
Yes,
just
and they're upstairs.
they're just upstairs and they're being watched by somebody else.
Right. And just like yesterday too, went out to meet with a new client. Some grandkids were here, so I had to sneak to go to the washroom before they knew I was home, because then forget it. Once they know grandma's home, it's done.
Wow.
Yeah.
Bathroom breaks, having to run the gauntlet of your
And
grandchildren.
I sure a lot of parents with young kids
Yeah.
understand that.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And
Yeah.
I know COVID has been negative a lot, but
Hmm.
I think it also has a positive, because people, and I was telling this to my client yesterday, people are more understanding now with parents that need to work from home and have
Okay.
children.
Okay.
I've felt like some of my clients told me that before they wanted to hide their kids, no, don't make noise. But because COVID forced everybody to work from home for a while, there's this
Kids were
level
kind of
of,
out in the front, out front there.
right. So it gave them just a little bit of that ease. Well, everybody now understands that I do have children, but I also need to work.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. Luckily mine isn't small anymore. she's in her 20s, so
Mhm.
I can reason with her a little bit more.
Yeah. So I'm at that
um,
point now where I'm training my grandkids because they're 2 years old. Everybody knows 2 year
mhm.
olds. But if I need to do a meeting and it's just at a time where I have to babysit, I've gotten to the point now where I talk to my grandkids and say, here, you can sit here next to grandma. I just need to do this meeting, and I'll give them a snack. And they look at me, they'll come peek at the computer to see who's on there, but then, they stay quiet as much as possible. So I
Yeah,
think that's going to help me get into that life work balance because now the grandkids are understanding
okay.
that, okay, sometimes grandma needs to work. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I think this is a good place. We're gonna take a quick break. You are listening to The Business Mind. I am Mark Fechner. Remember, leave your comments on our Facebook Live feed or on the Transformation Talk Radio website. We are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about this life work balance challenge that Sawsan has, and some aspects to it, and hopefully some kind of takeaway by the end of the session. So, stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back to The Business Mind. I am Mark Fechner. And our guest today is enrolled agent Sawsan Abubaker of IFS Tax and Accounting LLC. Um, Sawsan, tell people how they can get a hold of you.
You can reach me through email at Abubaker at INT Financials, that's plural, financials.com, or you can call me at 708-529-9251.
And do you have a website, right?
Yes, it's intfinancials.com.
Okay, cool. So before the break, excuse me, we talked about creating this work life balance, and really the motivation behind that for you is being there for your family.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of solopreneurs, that's certainly in the forefront of my mind, was, when I started doing what I do, it was with the idea that I would be available for my family.
Mhm.
um, and that I need, obviously, to make a living, but I wanted to, be there when my family needed me. So talk a little bit more about being there for your family. What does that all mean to you?
It means that, as family comes first. And as family, we're supposed to be there through the rough times, the good times. And for me, it just means that I feel like I've helped my children and my family become better. For me, in order for me to be there to support them. If I was not a solopreneur over these past few years, I wouldn't have been there for my children when we've had some, stressful times. And if I was working for somebody else, I've thought about this all the time. I probably would have lost my job
Mm-hmm.
because I needed to be there because there was health issues and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, that's very fulfilling for me to be able to do that. And at the same time, be able to work and make a living without feeling the pressure of, oh, someone's going to come tell me you're not meeting your goals, or someone's going to come tell me, well, if you don't do this, you're going to lose your job, which
Right.
will add more stress to you.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Um, so what are some of the things that you have to deal with, and when you're trying to put your family first?
Hmm.
What are some of the roadblocks to that?
From the work perspective, the roadblocks really are clients not understanding, especially the newer clients that don't know you.
Okay.
The ones who know you, like the ones who've been with me since 2010, were very understanding, and I'm very grateful for them because they knew my work ethic. They knew who I was as, a professional, that they understood that, okay, now she's facing something um, with her family, that she needs to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And they saw that even though sometimes I was delayed or anything in projects, the quality was still there.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were understanding. I
Okay.
think that was the biggest roadblock, really. And then later on too, as time passes by, you can say I don't do self-care. So you get
Mm-hmm.
to the point where you're exhausted. You try to push yourself, but your body tells you no, and you got to listen. And
Right.
that became another roadblock for me, because then I started thinking, okay, I need a clone or something so I can, finish all these tasks.
Yeah, I think we all could use clones at times.
Right. So I think the biggest roadblocks for me were those, the time and the clients who weren't understanding
Hmm.
that, we are human too. Even though we're there for you
Right.
to provide the service, we also have families and we have situations that sometimes arise that we have to deal with.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So talking about clients,
Mhm.
understanding, tell me a little bit more about that.
What I mean is some clients, and this probably will fall into talking about like higher end clients and lower paying clients, but some clients are very demanding. They expect you there 24/7.
Hmm.
And I actually had a client tell me that like 6 years ago. You're a small business owner. You need to be there 24/7, because he needed something from me. It was like 9:30 p.m. and it was way after hours. I had company over, and I told him, I'm sorry, I can't do it right now. I have company over. I can do it first thing in the morning. He got upset and he's like, you can stick to your company. I'm going to find someone else. I said, you know, what is there to say to that?
Yeah.
And I found through my experience throughout the years, the lower paying clients are the ones who are more demanding and want you to, I don't know, for lack of a better term, want to work you to the bone, and still there's no like appreciation for the professional services you give them.
Right. Right.
And they do require a lot of time, where if you want to balance work and life with that
Hmm.
type of atmosphere, it becomes very hard.
Okay.
Yeah.
So lower paying clients. Um, Tell me more about that. How does that manifest itself in your business?
Well, maybe this stems from me too. Like, I'll feel very guilty if I don't help someone that tells me I need help,
Okay.
and it trickles over to the clients. So if a client comes to me and said, I need this, 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 but I can't afford it, or I can't, because we also have like price lists and standards of, to cover at least everything we use to service the client.
Hmm.
But there have been a lot of times where I've, bent the rules I write for myself,
Hmm.
and, felt sorry for the client and given in, to later on say, well, you know, when you're working at a loss, basically, you then get really stressed out because you're like, okay, how am I going to cover my bills?
Right. Right.
And when you talk to the client, and um, as we know out there, there's a lot of tax professionals, there's different prices. There's people who are not licensed and, charging like $50 or something like that, which
Hmm.
doesn't even cover the price of the software for one tax return.
Hmm.
But when you need to look into that and looking into your competition, and you have to like follow just to have that client,
Hmm.
that puts you in a cycle of
Hmm.
um, like obstacle, stress,
Right.
roadblock, stress
Right.
all the time. So you need to get out of that mindset.
So how prevalent is it for you to be
Hmm.
thinking about your competition?
I've gotten to the point now, after many years, like this past, I'd say maybe COVID was the big push
Hmm.
for me to say, well, I have to look at my competition in terms of skill level, not in terms of price,
Okay.
in terms of quality, in terms of qualification, not price.
Okay.
Because in all honesty, my competition are those who are qualified like I am.
Mm-hmm.
Those who do the extra education, those who are licensed, but those who just open up to do a tax return during season just to make money are not my competition, because many of those have put their clients in the audit zone, basically, to say. Like people, they file tax returns that are incorrect, and then the client gets in trouble, and then they have to pay the higher fee, for example, to get out of that trouble.
Right. Not only the higher fees, but also possibly the penalties.
The penalties, the entries, and then having the IRS's eye on you, thinking that as you file in the future, you're going to make the same mistake.
Right.
Yeah. So I have changed my mindset in terms of don't look at the price, you look at.
Right. So one of the things that I think about a lot when working with a client is the fact that as a business owner, not thinking about competition, but thinking about my competitors as information. And that really I have there are no competitors. At least the way I think of it. I'm kind of referencing Simon Sinek in his work on game theory. That, if you're playing an infinite game, there are no rules. The players can change without notice, and the game can just keep on going. And so I'm not competing against another business owner or another business coach. I'm competing against myself at all times.
And that's the next level that I need to get to.
Okay. So what do you think is keeping you from getting to that next level?
I think just the fact that me wanting to make sure that I'm taking care of my family, and thinking I need to change things around, like networking or the way I present myself, for me to get out of that cycle. Because right now, even though I do plan on changing and putting steps to change, I still fall back into, okay, I am still going to take on this client because I want to make sure I have the funds to pay the bills, because I don't have the time or the focus yet because once you change things, you're bound to lose clients because they're used to a specific way, and this is how they want it. So am I prepared to lose some of those clients for me to get the ones that I really need, like the higher paying ones?
All right. That's a valid point. So what would you need to do to prepare yourself for any, for a losing of certain number of clients, making sure also thinking about the fact that some of these clients are people that are not high yielding to begin with. So when you sacrifice the amount of money you're making, you have to increase that by the number of clients you're dealing with. Whereas when you balance out, having more higher paying clients, then you don't need to have the higher quantity of clients.
Correct.
So what's the process for you to start, going from, number of clients to low paying, and then slowly doing this? What does that process look like for you?
Right now, what I'm doing is I'm changing some processes in the practice. Like there's some software out there that's practice management that'll help me automate those small tasks that I don't have to spend a lot of time on. So then I can take that time to go out and network more, to get into where I can reach those higher paying clients. So I can present myself, I can show examples of what I've done for clients. So then that'll encourage them to want to have this conversation with me to see if we'll be a good fit.
Okay.
And this way too, so once I have like that door open to the higher paying clients, I'd feel more comfortable saying, okay, if this one is going to leave me, like the lower paying, it'll be okay because I'm going to have the replacement. And my goal is quality over quantity.
Okay.
And because once you have that quality client, because the quality client too helps you develop as a business owner, helps you develop as a professional too, because they're always challenging you, how can I service you better?
Right. So what does that conversation look like with some of these clients that will probably fall by the wayside?
The ones who would probably just leave if I higher prices or change my look or
Well,
my direction.
you're 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 suggesting or wanting to implement, not even
Mhm.
suggesting, but you wanting to implement the notion that, yeah, I can't afford to have you as my client anymore because you're, the return on investment for you
Mhm.
is sacrificing working and being there for your family. I mean, that's your return on investment at this
Right.
point.
Right. Well, you
So
do
what
you.
is that? So having that conversation
Mhm.
with some of those clients, what does that look like?
Well, to be honest, you don't. I've never had to straight out have a conversation like that. But the minute you present to the clients as a whole that I'll be raising my fees, for example, this year,
Hmm.
or we are changing the direction of the practice to provide you with better quality service, but that's going to require us also to raise our fees.
Hmm.
That by itself filters that client out because the client doesn't even want to have a conversation with you.
Okay.
They'll just say, "Oh, I'm sorry then, since you're hiring your fees, we're just going to go look elsewhere."
Hmm.
And I try to explain to them, look at me as yourself as a business owner. Don't you want to be there for your family, or don't you want to provide for your family? And would you accept to have um, a client or somebody who is not at least breaking even with you?
Right.
Look at that from that perspective and think of me, put yourself in my shoes. Some of them will think about it and say, yeah, that makes sense. And, they may try to work it out with me. And some of them just look at that dollar amount and don't look at
Right.
the other things of, I've helped you save money on taxes. I've protected you from being audited and things like that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And that sometimes really kind of falls on deaf ears, to be
Yeah.
honest.
True, true. So that's why, once the client tells you, doesn't look at the bigger picture and they just focus on that dollar amount, for me anyway, I say, should I even be wasting some time or energy on that if they're not really going to listen?
How how um productive is that type of conversation with clients?
It again, it'll fall back on the client. Like if
Hmm.
the client is open to the conversation and you explain to them and they're like, oh, they have the open mindset to say, oh yeah, that makes sense, and you've helped me throughout the years, then they'll say, yeah, there's nothing wrong with you, raising the fees. And I wouldn't raise the fees just a one time. It'll be like a
Right.
gradual increase.
Okay.
Then that becomes productive because they also somehow maybe changes their mindset as well to think about, their employees or, other professionals they work with on their team to say, yes, they work to make a living too. And, it shouldn't be, I'm going to treat you or you treat me. We work together to grow. And that's what I tell all my clients. Yes, you're hiring me from the outside, but I'm part of your team
Right.
because I'm
Right.
there to help you grow.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I taking that concept of, you're having a conversation with your existing clients, obviously,
Mhm.
but what are you going to change with onboarding new clients? What does that conversation look like?
That's a little different in terms of because they're getting to know me and I'm getting to know them.
Right.
It'll be more like a call where I ask questions of what are they looking for. And
Hmm.
then I'll use an example of what I've done for another client that's similar. and how, my skills or my services have helped them, whether it's saving on taxes, lowering their tax liability, or helping them see more of their, profit. Go
It's
ahead.
understandable that, in any initial conversation, we're doing, we're selling ourselves basically
Mhm.
in
Mhm.
our practices. But
Mhm.
the other side of that sales process,
Mhm.
and it is a sales process,
Yes.
is also eliminating those people that really don't meet your criteria.
Correct. And that's part of the
So,
conversation.
so what is your what is your criteria in that conversation moving forward?
My criteria in the conversation moving forward is the client that wants to learn and is not focusing on what I'm going to charge. They're focusing on how I can help them. Because those who focus um, basically on the dollar value, that's one of the first questions they ask you. What are you going to charge me?
Right.
Before even explaining to me what they need. Moving forward, those are the cues I listen to. If the client asks me, more of, okay, I'm going through this situation, what would you have done in a similar situation, for
Hmm.
example? Or, I'm facing, every year I pay a lot of taxes. Is there a way for me to reduce that? And we
Hmm.
have that conversation. That tells me that the client wants to learn, wants to take advice, and wants a professional that's going to be there to help them.
Hmm.
Like for example, yesterday, the new client I met with, she said, please charge me what you would charge, and I don't want you to work at a loss, without us even saying anything. All I did was ask her, what have you done in terms of tax filing?
Hmm.
And that was the first thing that came out of her, for a
Okay.
conversation.
Okay.
That surprised me because it was the first time, it ever happens to me. I
Someone
looked
actually is concerned about you as opposed
at,
to, well, how it affects their
yeah,
bottom line.
and I looked at her and I'm like, she's like, are you surprised? I said, to be quite honest, yes, I am. Because the first thing people worry about, especially when it comes to in my industry, sometimes that's the first question they ask. Well, what are you charging me? Before they even see what I can do for them.
Hmm. Right.
She's like, no, she's like, I'm not that type of person because I work for a living. You work for a living. And, you're doing this also to help me, but at the same time, you cannot be losing money
Okay.
in the process. You know,
That certainly is quite gratifying.
yes, it is. Yes, it is. And actually, 2 weeks ago, because I work with a CPA in the area and we do audits for nonprofit organizations, so I quoted the client the same price we charged him last year for an audit. So he went quiet because his bookkeeper was with us on the call, and she goes to him, "Is that okay with you?" He went quiet. He's like, "No," and I said, "Oh my God, what's happening?" He's like, "I'm upping that by $1,000." I'm like, really? He's like, yes. He's like, I'm very happy with your work, and it's not fair for you to just charge me the same price as last.
So, how are you going to find more of those kind of clients?
Good question, Mark. I mean, I do tell these clients, referrals. I'm very, open to your referrals. That
Hmm.
shows that you trust me, and your referral is going to trust your opinion. So I keep that door open,
Hmm.
and then I just look at how did I meet that client, and then try to see if there's other ways, because actually this client was a referral, the one I met yesterday,
Hmm.
and then the other one was a referral from another accountant in the area who's not familiar with nonprofit.
Hmm.
So I try to keep those relationships open because even though we're all tax professionals, but some have their weaknesses, some have their strengths, and we can
Right.
work together.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that I'm sure there are plenty of people that would love to have clients that go, oh, you know what? I'll give you more.
Oh, yes, we would. And when it happens to you for the first time, it's a shocker.
Yeah, it that is certainly so. In sort of forward thinking here,
Mhm.
what will this do for you? So finding new clients, having a more discerning conversation, and being more discerning in picking,
Mhm.
who you want to work with.
Mhm.
It is, I think oftentimes business owners, we don't think of this as a two-way street. We think of this as, well, I got to service the client, therefore I have to do whatever the client wants. And in any sales process and in any sales funnel process that I've read and talked and learned about, it's really about, you're not going to attract everybody, and
Mhm.
nor should you.
Mhm. Yeah.
So identifying who you want to work with and identifying what are those characteristics
Mhm.
is incredibly important, because as you have pointed out, we don't work in a vacuum.
Yeah.
There are other things that are at um under consideration when
Mhm.
we are working.
Mhm.
you know for you, it's family. I
Mhm.
have the same thought about that. So in changing the discernment of who you want to work with, what is that going to do for you and the bigger picture for you?
That would alleviate a lot of like stress from my end in terms of thinking that I'm not going to have enough time to service all these clients.
Hmm.
When I am more picky, let's say for lack of a better word, of who I want to work with as a client, that also opens up where I can even hone my skills better to
Hmm.
help them.
Hmm.
And it will not require all that time either, because you would only have a small group of clients to work with that you can focus on what you need to service them.
Hmm.
And at the same time, I will have enough time to also take care of the family, because I
Hmm.
won't have like 100 clients I have to worry about every day.
with
And
a with 100 different, requirements
situations
and
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 right,
and demands and all that kind of good stuff.
right, exactly. And when you lower that, and we live in an abundant market, so everybody will have that niche and everybody's going to have enough people to work with. But you just need to change that mindset and say, yes, I can be picky and pick who I want to work with, so
Hmm.
then I can use my skills to help them without all the stress and the pressure,
Hmm.
and at the same time be there for those who need me and who I'm basically working for, which is family.
So if you had a chance to go back in time, what would you tell your future self?
Don't shortchange yourself from the beginning.
Okay.
Like, don't undervalue yourself. Like, struggle at the beginning more
Hmm.
to get to prove your value, so then you don't end up like now, 11, 12 years later, thinking, what have I done to myself?
Hmm.
And needing now to basically feel like you need to start from scratch to get to those, to that level you want
To
to
that
be.
level that you want. Yeah. Yeah. You when we were getting ready for this, you shared with me a very sad statistic, but how people in the accounting world are kind of dropping like flies, sometimes literally.
Yeah, yeah. Like, people during tax season have passed away in the office, working the long hours, be it a heart attack, be it a stroke, because they want more clients, more clients, more clients,
Hmm.
not thinking about what is that going to do to you when you are like, now we're in that time period of
Right.
April 5th, March 15, April 15 deadline.
Right.
And a lot of these clients come to you once a year. So you're going to have to go through a full years of information to prepare that one
Hmm.
tax return. So that's very stressful. And to be quite honest, during tax season, we don't think about our health. We don't think about eating healthy. We sit on our desk. Sometimes you're eating while you're working. drinking 10 million cups of coffee just to keep
Yeah.
going, and, the chocolate, the sweets, anything to just keep you going. So that
Right.
really affects you. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And COVID, I think, also brought that to light to all of us, because even all my colleagues that I've spoken with have said this tax season is going to be different. We need to take care of ourselves too.
Okay. All right. So before we take another break, tell us one more time how people can get a hold of you.
You can email me at abubaker@intfinancials.com. You can also call me at 708-529-9251. And I also have a website, intfinancials.com. You can look me up on LinkedIn as well.
Okay, great. I can personally attest to the fact that I have worked with Sawsan with a few other clients, and she is wonderful to work
Thank
with.
you. I appreciate it.
I highly recommend it.
Thank you.
This is the Business Mind. I am Mark Fechner. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, Sawsan's going to share some of the takeaways that she's going to utilize in her business and, let's face it, her life, to moving forward. If you have any insights that you would like to share, please feel free, reach out on the Transformation Talk Radio website or on our Facebook live feed comment section / Transformation Talk Radio. So see you on the other side of the break. And kind of almost went there a little too early. Welcome back to our show. So Sawsan, tell us, what are you going to take away from today's session?
I need to be stay focused on what I want, stay focused on my plan for the business. And like I said on the break, I'm changing my questionnaire so I can stick to what I really want this business to be. And if I feel during a conversation that I'm going to lean towards the old ways, I need to stop myself.
Okay.
Regardless.
And how are you going to go about doing that?
I may have to put some kind of reminder or something in front of me on my desk, just to keep me focused, that once I feel like I'm leaning, I may have to look at that, whether it's a quote or something that'll tell me, no, you need to keep within the mindset that you want a higher quality practice.
Create a big neon sign.
Actually, I can right here because I have a wall in front of me. I can let it flash. But yeah, I need to think of this as, okay, if I want to continue to be healthy, to take care of my family, I need to work with clients that will not drain all the time out of me, or try to drain as much as they can out of me. I need to work with those who actually understand that we need to work together as a team to grow, both of us to grow, basically, together. And yeah, and that's what I need to do. And I need to, and I've done this before, where the clients and I get into conversation and we don't finish the conversation in terms of, what is required from them for me to be able to service them properly, be it time, responding to my questions on time, what it'll cost, for example, what they need to pay me. The new practice management software that I'm going to use is tying invoices to the project, so that way they won't be able to see the project until they pay the invoice.
Okay.
So that'll also be, because at times, especially during tax season, you finish, you show them the tax return, and then you have to run after the client for months to get paid. That's an added stress. So
yeah, chasing money is always my favorite part of the job.
Exactly. So this new practice management software says, no, tie your invoice to your project, and if the client wants to see that tax return or wants to see those financial statements, they need to pay. And the minute they pay, the documents are released and sent to their portal.
Okay.
Yeah. So those kind of things. So I need to make sure that I cover everything within that conversation with the client. So that's why
So,
now, go ahead.
so how are you going to kind of remind yourself of that?
Stop relying on my memory and have the document in front of me,
Okay.
because that's one of my big mistakes, that I think I'm going to remember it all.
Mm-hmm.
And I've gotten to the age where no, it doesn't happen.
Yes,
Yeah.
we've both gotten to that age.
Yeah. So what I do now is I have multiple screens, so I'll have the questionnaire in front of me. So then, even though if the client and I get in deep conversation, I still keep an eye to make sure we cover everything
Okay.
that needs to be covered.
You had mentioned something in a few minutes ago about,
Mhm.
and of course I'm not remembering what you said, but it had to do with how are you going to go about. Oh, never mind. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I can't think of it. I should have written it down while I was there. So what else do you want to take away from today's session?
I basically that you've just reinforced, because I'm one to say I want to plan and I want to do this, but get comfortable where I'm already at, and it's
Mhm.
hard to get out of that comfort zone.
So
Even though
what will you do to kind of push yourself out
I
of
would,
that out of old habits?
one is writing down everything and making sure it's in front of me when I'm talking to the clients.
Okay.
Another one would have to be utilizing all the tools that I can, like this new practice management software, for example.
Okay.
Or if there's any type of training or learning, talking to people, because that's how you learn and that's how you can implement tools to, basically, it's a discipline. You have to discipline yourself. So I'm going to have to keep reminding myself, either putting reminders on the phone or putting alarms or something, until I change the habit.
Mm-hmm.
And, and when you have clients like the two I mentioned, telling you, no, I'm going to either pay you more or I'm going to send you more referrals, that's a reassurance for you, reassuring for me
Mm-hmm.
that yes, I'm on the right track. So I
Okay.
just need to remember that.
And you also had mentioned tapping into asking for those referrals.
Yes. And um, networking more, being more specific, and, it's nothing against anybody, but this is what I want. And this
Mm-hmm.
is what I need, and these are the type of people I want to work with.
And we're coming towards the end of this
Mm-hmm.
episode. But part of that is also your messaging,
Yeah.
how you're talking about your business.
Mm-hmm.
How, and so how would you go about changing your own personal marketing?
I
I understand what you're saying about, talking more about what you need and whatnot,
Mhm.
but let's face it, we're here to service the client.
Right,
And so the client, when we first meet them, doesn't care what I need
right.
or what you need.
Oh no,
So,
that'll be in the back of my mind, what I need when I'm talking
okay.
to them.
So
But in
how
terms
are
of,
you going to translate that into
mhm,
a marketing, finding the new client? How are you going to translate that into a different uh, conversation with the clients?
I need to not feel like I'm being like arrogant or boasting when I explain to the client what I can do to help them. Because
Okay.
that was another issue for me too, that I found it very difficult to talk about myself. I thought people would think I was being arrogant.
Hmm.
But but then I learned, how is the client going to learn or know what I can do for them if I don't tell them, I've done this, 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 and this is how I can help you.
Right.
So that's something too that I've become more vocal in what I've done for other clients
Okay.
that can help me help them and what it can do for them.
Okay. Cool. All right. Good. Anything else you want to share that you might be doing differently?
Just making sure I can manage time management and
Mhm.
managing my time. And at the times where I do feel tired, I just allow myself to take that break so
Mhm.
then I can continue.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
One more time. How can people get a hold of you?
I can be emailed at abubaker@intfinancials.com. It's a plural. And you can call me at 708-529-9251. I have a website, intfinancials.com, and you can also look me up on LinkedIn,
Right.
and we can have a conversation.
Very good. Very good. So thank you very much.
Thank
If
you.
you would, if anyone who's listening would like to work with me or contact me, or even be a guest on this program, I can be reached at markfechner.com, or you can email me at mark@markfechner.com. And I'm happy to have a 30-minute conversation with anybody about any topic, truly. So thank you, Sawsan, for being here. Thank you
Well,
for
thank you
your
for having me.
openness and willingness to talk about this particular challenge in your life. And I know, from personal experience that you take this type of stuff and you do improve on what you do, and the consummate professional that you are. It's
Thank
it's
you.
it's fun to be with. It's fun to work with.
Thank you. Well,
Uh,
having conversations with you, you're always good with helping us come up with the ideas and tips to. You don't have the answer, but you help us find it.
well, that's kind of the point. So, my next guest is a little bit different guest. He is a fine artist painter. His name is Mark Vanderven of Vanderven Studios. I'm not quite sure what we're going to be talking about next, but it's a little different twist on what I've done in the past. His business is art, and producing it and selling it and things like that. So I'm going to be very curious to see what that conversation is all about. The Business Mind airs the second and fourth Tuesday of every month at 10 a.m. Central. That is 11 a.m. Eastern and 8 a.m. Pacific. So until we meet again, be safe, be healthy, and be profitable. See you next time. Thank you for listening to The Business Mind on Transformation Talk Radio. I'm Mark Fechner, where we focus on real people with real issues, and we tackle those issues in real time. I don't have the answers. I hope you find the answers within you. The Business Mind Show airs the second and fourth Tuesday of every month at 8 a.m. Pacific on TransformationTalkRadio.com. Sometimes all you need is a change in perception. A certified coach will listen to your challenge, ask you intuitive, open-ended questions, help you find fresh perspectives, and then hold you accountable to reach your goals. Coaching is an investment in yourself that can create paths to greater success. To find out more about my coaching, go to markfechner.com.